What do you see as the sort of main barriers for change and for this level of transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. And that, actually, again, sorry, it was an interesting thing for me about moving from from industry to consulting, is that rather than doing these transformations every 7 to 10 years, I'm actually getting to do them repeatedly. So I am seeing more both the barriers and the lessons learned, and that's really fun. And in terms of the barriers, I think there is an interesting thing around transformation, around pricing and underwriting, that you tend to see the big transformation spends, and a lot of it gets spent on things where you can clearly communicate the benefit in terms of financials, and it's often in terms of improvement to the expense ratio. And that's the fundamental of, it's predictable and you can very easily demonstrate it. Whereas, actually, you look at a combined ratio, by far the biggest part is the loss ratio. You look at the spread of companies' performance over the market, and the spread of the expense ratio is not huge, whereas the spread of the loss ratio is huge. And so you can really, by moving from bottom quartile to top quartile, it's enormous the amount of change you can make. But it's very hard to quantify. It's very hard to say, next year, if I do this transformation, my loss ratio will be X, because you could say that, and you could then hope that there isn't a cat that year or something.
Yeah.
Like, yep. But I think that is a real challenge, and it's something we really, when we're doing this work with our clients, it's something we try and support them on a lot, because it is hard to quantify that, and finding ways to kind of communicate and explain the benefits that are coming, both quantitative and qualitatively, it is really important. And I genuinely believe this is where the most value for companies comes from, but it's harder to communicate that. So that would be my first barrier. I think there's a second barrier about any sort of big transformation, right? That they're hard and they take a long time, and maintaining that sort of the momentum and the enthusiasm and the resourcing throughout a kind of large scale transformation does take a lot of time, does take a lot of effort, and you really need to think through your strategy and that kind of change management piece of bringing people on the journey, because there's always an example of how this hasn't worked somewhere, and people who've been burnt. So it's not something people want to jump. I think it's right that people don't jump into this lightly, that people think through exactly what they want to get out of it and plan how they're going to get there, because they are challenging projects to do.